I want to start my message this morning with a question. Do you know that God sees you? God sees you right now, and he sees you differently than I do. I see you on the outside, but God, he sees you on the inside. He knows what brought you here today. He knows if you wanted to come or if you didn't. And not only does he know what brought you here today, he knows what you brought with you here today. He knows if you are in a happy place in your life right now, or if you're in a lonely, dark place. God knows what is going on with your family. Maybe you're longing for someone who left too soon, a spouse, a child, a parent, a friend. God sees your grief. God sees how others are treating you, and God sees how you are feeling about yourself. God sees you. Michelle, God sees you. Nancy, God sees you. Mike, God sees you. Jim, God sees you. God sees you. As I bring this message this morning, I want you to keep in the forefront of your mind that God sees you and he cares deeply about you. Today is Justice Sunday with a focus on the sanctity of life. Pastor Justin has asked me to speak on the topic of suicide. I'm a mental health therapist by profession, so this is something that I talk about many days on the job. I'm also Pam, a wife, a mother, a foster parent, a neighbor, a friend, and this is a topic I encounter many times in my personal life. I looked up the meaning of the word sanctity. Sanctity is the quality of being holy, sacred, valuable, and inviolable. What does inviolable mean? It means that something must be respected and not removed or ignored. Suicide is taking one's own life. Sanctity is defending life because it's valuable. I know that right now there are people in this room who are thinking about, or who have thought about at some point, taking their own lives. I also know there are people listening right now who have lost people who they cared for deeply to suicide. To those of you who have lost someone, I am truly, truly sorry. Today I want to talk to those of you who feel like giving up, and I also want to talk to those of you who are walking alongside those who feel hopeless. Ron, if you could pop the first PowerPoint up. Followers of Jesus, strong Christians, can struggle with wanting to die. There are a number of people in the Bible who wanted to die. I have listed some of them on the screen along with their stories, where they can be found in the Bible and what made them despair to the point of wanting to die. There's Rebecca. She had family conflict. Solomon, he wondered, what's the point of life? Elijah had physical and emotional exhaustion, discouragement. He felt afraid. Job experienced the death of his children. He went through loss, devastation, physical illness. He was worried he'd been forsaken by God, and he wondered how could bad things happen to a good person. Jonah felt angry at God, and God's plan didn't make any sense to him. Moses got fed up with leading sinful people. Jeremiah didn't see any results from his ministry. He felt lonely and he felt insecure. David went through periods of depression and deep despair. He faced fear, loneliness, loss of loved ones. He failed and he had guilt over his failures. Of these people who lived long ago, dig deep. Go to a commentary such as enduringword.com and read all the background information to better understand. Try to imagine them as a modern person. Which one of them do you most relate to? If you look at how they held on in the face of wanting to die, you will see that each of them told. They might have written a poem or a song or a lament, or poured out words of anguish and confusion to God person. But they didn't keep their feelings inside. They didn't keep quiet, and they made the choice to trust God. Yeah. Wait, where is it? Oh. Off. Oh, perfect. Do I need to take this thing off? That's okay. I'll leave it on. Is that a good spot? Can you hear me? Okay. Ron, if you could put the next picture up. On June 23rd, 2018, 12 members of the Wild Boars soccer team, ages 11 to 16, along with their 25-year-old assistant coach, entered a cave system in their country of Thailand to explore after a practice. While they were inside, an early season rainstorm caused water levels to rise dramatically, forcing the team to retreat to a high cavern far above the cave entrance. They were trapped in a dark cave with no way out. Turbid, fast-moving water, low visibility, and narrow, difficult-to-navigate passages hampered rescue operations. It wasn't until July 2nd, 9 days later, that British divers found the boys on a rocky ledge inside the cave. At that point, it became apparent that a rescue would be extremely risky and dangerous. I often hear people who are feeling suicidal describe the place they're in as much worse than depression. It's a deep, deep darkness, a place of despair. Feelings of hope are gone. They try all the things they should try, and nothing helps. I get calls from clients and friends saying, Pam, I'm in a very dark place. Or Pam, I'm having bad thoughts again. Quickly becomes apparent that they're not at the mouth of a cave, but down deep in a dangerous and terrifying place. The Bible states in John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. One brave man during the rescue at the caves was a Navy SEAL who died from lack of air while delivering oxygen tanks inside the cave. What does it mean to lay down your life for a friend? It means crawling down into the deep, dark place of despair to be with them. It means going into a place you're not familiar with and maybe not even comfortable in. You don't have a game plan. It means making time for someone, maybe a lifetime of time. And how do you think those boys felt when they first sensed that there was someone else in the cave with them? Were they still in an awful predicament? Absolutely horrible. But now there was someone with them. Someone had the courage to enter the darkness. Someone had the courage to join them in their place of darkness. On July 8th, 9th, and 10th, the rescue was successful as the boys were brought back out of the cave. The rescuers had to hold on to the boys to get them out, and the boys had to be clipped on to the rescuers. When we find ourselves in places of despair, we need each other. Right now we're going to listen to a song called God is in This Story by Katie Nicole and Big Daddy Weave.
There's torn up pages in this book, words that tell me I'm no good, chapters that define me for so long. But the hands of grace and endless love dusted off and picked me up, told my
One of my pet peeves is when I go to church and they have someone give their testimony as if that's the end of their story. God saves them and they live happily ever after. No further problems. Sometimes I found out later that the person felt they had to lie in their testimony to make themselves or God look good, or something else happens in their life which seems to negate their story of victory. So today I've invited some of my good friends from New York State to join me and share their story. They're going to talk about the experience of a suicide attempt in their family. They have learned a lot about that experience, and they are a family who is still learning, not perfect, but trusting God as they move forward on their journey. As many of you know, our family moved to Lowville, New York in January of 2007. It's a place well known for its snow. Alyssa was little, maybe kindergarten or first grade, and I had signed her up for downhill ski lessons. While she skied, I would sit in my nice warm van and read. On one particularly cold day, it was probably sub-zero wind chills. As I sat facing the mountain, I noticed a little lady with her hands shoved deep into her pockets, looking like she was probably going to soon freeze to death. Against the childhood warnings of my mother, never to pick up strangers, I yelled out to the lady from my van and asked if she wanted to sit with me. We spent the next couple of hours starting what would become a close friendship. Our families became close, our kids grew up together, and even to this day, we have our annual April Fool's celebration. Mike Judd has been, this is Mike has been the director of Beaver Camp. It's a Mennonite camp in the Adirondacks, similar to Camp Swatara, and he's been there for 27 years. Mike is also a member of the local school board and volunteers as an EMT. He'll drive the ambulance, even in blinding blizzards, from the small rural hospital in his town, an hour and a half away to Syracuse to a bigger hospital. Mike is a 46er. He has hiked all 46 of the Adirondack Peaks. Mike has been a Christian for a long time, and he is involved in the local church. He has a strong personal faith in Jesus Christ. Gina works in the billing department at a doctor's office. She grew up as a Baptist pastor's daughter. She is well known for her warmth and friendliness and super loud laugh. She is crazy and fun, the perfect friend to me. And being a part of an Italian family is very important to her. Her relationship with Jesus is the most important thing to her. Caleb, Mike and Gina's son, is 20 years old. He's a diesel mechanic. He's not here today. Caleb likes jumping out of airplanes, fixing up cars, electronics, and eating good food. Mackenzie is Mike and Gina's 22-year-old daughter. She graduated from the Cairn University last month and is just finished up a semester of study at Oxford University in England. Mackenzie loves to travel, and she is deeply devoted to Dunkin' Donut coffee. She's also a 46er. Their story won't be the same story that you have. Their story will have different twists and turns and varying outcomes. So together, we are going to share their story with you. You will see that we are reading our words. We planned what we were going to say ahead of time so that our story would be clear and so that we wouldn't get off on a big tangent. So listen to this as if you are listening to us read you the story of our lives. Get this out of the way. I think we're using this. So let me get resituated here. Now we need this. Okay. All right. Mackenzie, you and I started a mentoring friendship together when you were in high school. Maybe you could start out by telling us a bit about your early years.
Yes. During my early childhood, I was pretty happy, but I remember sometimes I had feelings of depression. I noticed myself start to change in 7th grade when I got my iPod Touch. That's the first time I remember clearly thinking about suicide. I was around 12 years old at the time. Oh, man, already? Okay, sorry. Okay. I began to use the noise of social media to avoid thinking and feeling. I would feel overwhelmed with emotion, but I didn't know how to deal with the darkness and anxiety I felt. I began to isolate myself and spend time on the device. I started to avoid spending time with others and the activities that made me happy. I wasn't using my iPod a ton, but I noticed that the more I used it, the worse I began to feel. So about a year later, I took a hammer to it and threw it out. I felt like it was keeping me from being a kid and being close to Jesus. In 8th and ninth grade, I felt really happy and close to God. In 10th grade, I got a phone and my anxiety skyrocketed. This is when thinking about suicide became a habit. My phone and social media brought out things that were already there, like people pleasing and wanting to fit in. My mental health symptoms worsened with social media. I began binge watching, binge eating, always needing to listen to music, and staying busy. All noise to drown out thinking and thus feeling the feelings I wanted to avoid and didn't know how to deal with. So I trained myself to learn how not to feel, and I eventually was able to turn my feelings off like a light switch, which only worsened the anxiety and darkness when it would bubble up again. I eventually felt a suffocating anxiety and feeling of deadness inside. On January 28th, 2018, at the age of 17, I was in a really bad place. I took a lot of things to heart, but never dealt with the emotions because I didn't know how to, nor did I necessarily want to, because it seemed like painful and hard work. I felt like no one ever heard or understood me. My parents were the easiest ones to direct my anger at, even though I felt anger and hatred towards many people. So my parents were the easiest ones to direct my anger at, even though I felt anger and hatred towards many people. This was my senior year. I had no idea what I wanted to do at all. I couldn't think past graduation. I was anxious and I knew a huge change was coming. I felt like I was grasping out for friendships that were dying out. A week or two before that day, I had put a plan in my phone to end my life after senior night. I didn't feel like I had any options. My parents had suggested counseling, but that sounded hard, and this was the quickest, easiest option to end the pain.
Leading up to January 28th, 2018, I didn't realize, but my parenting and faith had become a formula. If I put my children in church, if I was a good parent, if I served God, then I would have an abundant life. Inside, I could feel the darkness. I began to change the way I read the Bible. Before, I had been reading to find out what I needed to do to earn God's favor. And now I began to read to understand God's character. I began reading scripture more, hoping to hear from God because I felt the darkness falling on my family. I was in a state of fear and anxiety. I needed something bigger, something outside of myself, to come into our situation and change it. My formula was not working. Pam encouraged me to read Lamentations 3, and I realized that we were living those verses. I felt just like those verses said. I decided to focus on verse 23, and it says, "Yet this I call to my mind, and therefore I have hope, because of the Lord's great love." Okay. So this is what I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. His compassions never fail, and they are new every morning. And great is his faithfulness. I said to myself, this is still a part of the verse, I said to myself, the Lord is my portion, and therefore I will wait for him. So I stood every morning facing whatever the day gave us. At night, I would go to bed exhausted physically and mentally. And even though I didn't sleep well, I was met every morning with new strength. On that Sunday morning in January, Pam and I were doing a teenage girls group at her house, and we were studying the book, The Me I Want to Be. I dragged Mackenzie to this group that morning. I just felt desperate for Mackenzie to hear the truth, especially the truth about her. I saw her losing her identity. I saw a hardness in her heart. Pam went around the room and asked the girls, "Who are you?" And Mackenzie's answer was, "I am the me I failed to be, and I am exhausted."
My mom had taken me to a group that morning, but honestly, I don't remember anything other than not wanting to go. I remember thinking halfway through this group that I was just done with life. Nothing happened in the meeting. I just remembered deciding I would go home and kill myself. I was tired of living. After the group, my mom and I fought in the car. I came back home, grabbed a huge glass of water, snuck some pills upstairs, and sat in front of my mirror crying and watching myself take them. I remember feeling like I didn't actually want to end my life. I felt like I was pushing against a wall, but eventually the wall wouldn't budge anymore, and I just stopped. Strangely, I felt like someone else was there. Something stopped me. It's almost like God was gently tapping me and saying, "You don't really want to do this." I got up and walked to another mirror and asked myself, "Why are you doing this? You love life." I went downstairs because I started to feel sick. My parents both stopped what they were doing and sat with me as I held a bucket. I was scared of what would follow or how they would react, but I think I was just tired of it all at that moment, the hiding and the darkness. Feeling sick makes you forget the normal anxieties and ego of life. All you want to do is get well. So I admitted to the attempt. I told them it was because I tried to kill myself. That's when they took me to the hospital. Physically, I felt awful and began to regret attempting at all.
I think for me, this has been a story of failure and hope, right or wrong. And I would say wrong, actually. I felt like I had failed Mackenzie. This had happened. I'd failed to protect her. This had happened right in my own home while I was there. When she came downstairs and asked what happens when you take that many pills, I went into EMT mode and stayed there for most of the next 36 hours.
It was, can you hear me? Okay. It was Sunday afternoon when I got a call from Gina. She told me that Mackenzie had tried to overdose on pills and asked if I could meet them at the hospital. I got in my car and I was waiting for them in the parking lot of the hospital when they arrived. Mackenzie's pediatrician, who is also our Christian friend, came as well. We sat there in a room of sadness. The nurses gave Mackenzie charcoal to make her throw up all the pills and poison. I remember sitting there watching for the next 9 to 10 hours as Mackenzie threw up. I watched the brokenness in the faces of her parents.
In the early hours of the next morning, I was taken by ambulance to another ER for evaluation. I had been experiencing a wave of different emotions since attempting. In the back of the ambulance, I started feeling angry and blaming my mom. I also felt a little awkward and embarrassed. My dad is an EMT, so he rode with me in the back of the ambulance, along with another familiar face, Jim Devers, an older man who was our friend through camp.
I felt like a hypocrite. How were we supposed to minister to teens when I couldn't minister to my own teen? My daughter was transported to a second ER where she would have a psych eval completed. The doctors stated her blood levels were still unstable. While we waited for another blood test result in a state of exhaustion, Mackenzie called me over to her bed and she said, "I did this because of you. My formula didn't work. I failed."
The first night in the psych center, I felt so lonely and very empty. I remember staring out a dark, blurry window as I tried to go to sleep that night, asking God if he could really help me. I met other people there, and since we all knew everyone was in for some reason and was not okay, it put us all in an odd community. It was kind of freeing. I didn't have to put up a front. Everyone knew I had problems, yet fully accepted me as is. I could finally just be me. Here, I was diagnosed with depression. The first time I was diagnosed with anything. I remember a moment where a teacher there, who had shown genuine care throughout the week for all of us, pulled me aside to check in on me. At the end, he said he wanted me to know what I did was very serious. It hit me then. I hadn't seen losing my life by my hand as a serious act. Life didn't seem real or tangible after isolating myself from people for so long, so taking my life seemed trivial. I remember praying specifically to be released at 2 o'clock on a Saturday. I got out 1 hour before. That was the first time I felt like God had ever heard me. I began to believe he was real again.
As we traveled to the local ER and then to the regional ER eval center, and finally to the treatment center, I was in EMT mode. In the days ahead, I felt like I had failed to connect with Mackenzie and be a safe place of grace for her, a place for emotions like fear, anger, and anxiety. I also realized I had not maintained a good work-life balance, and when work is ministry, that's an even more tragic feeling of failure. In hindsight, I regret not being more intentional in protecting and connecting with our son during this time. This impacted him more than we understood. I felt pressure to keep this private, to protect Mackenzie. I felt it was her story to tell and not ours. This was difficult because we had kids from school coming and going in our house the week that Mackenzie was in treatment. But worse was that my response left our son feeling isolated with no outlet to share his feelings.
Once I got out of the hospital, a lot happened, and I began finally starting to unpack all my issues. To consolidate the last 5 years, I'm going to use this pot that Pam is grabbing as a metaphor to explain all the ingredients that changed my life. I use ingredients in this metaphor instead of a toolbox because although a lot of what I will put into this pot are tools I utilized, several ingredients are also key events that happened to me. I don't think I'll ever know which ingredient worked the most or least, or what the perfect mix is. Individual lives and individual people are too complex to all follow the same recipe. So here are my ingredients in no particular order of importance. So ingredient 1 was counseling. In order to be released from the psych ward, I had to agree to counseling until the counselor decided to close my case. Counseling guided my process of getting to the root of things. It was hard at first, only because thinking and processing caused an overwhelming amount of emotions. And emotions are hard to feel and work through. Counseling was a tool that taught me how to get to the root of my emotions, finding the real issue and dealing with it in a healthy way, building new habits that could bring real, not perfect, but lasting change. I have not stopped getting counseling since. My second ingredient is openness. When I went back to school, a rumor beat me and everyone already knew. People treated me differently, and my whole life was out there for everyone to see and scrutinize. I lost some friends, but also gained deeper friendships with those that truly cared. After getting used to it, I felt free because I didn't have to hide anymore as I continued to struggle and have thoughts of suicide.
At Mackenzie's first counseling appointment, I sat in the waiting room. I was crying and praying to God. I needed hope, a bigger hope than anything this world could give me, and I needed peace, a bigger peace than anything this world had. I needed strength and courage to face our failures. My phone beeped and a daily verse popped up. It was Revelation 21:4. Says he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. My formula was over, but our story was not. I began to write every verse down that God gave me during this journey, and I have a really big stack of them. In April of 2018, our family took a trip to Utah and the Grand Canyon. Mackenzie refused to stay on the trails and would walk so close to the edge of the cliffs that 3 different people at different times told me I needed to take better care of my daughter and remove her from the edge. I knew I couldn't do that. She didn't care, and on one particular hike, a trail was marked with stone markers called cairns. She refused to walk between them, and I began to pray to God, angry that he wasn't giving us any changes. I told God that my daughter's heart was hard and I can't parent it. The trail was a symbol to me of how she was making her decisions, no regard to the cairns that we had placed in her life. Then I turned a corner on the trail and I saw a beautiful stone arch. I immediately had peace, and I heard God say, even rocks erode, give me time. Her story will be beautiful, and people will be drawn to her. So I began to pray a new private prayer, that God would soften the heart, my daughter's heart of stone, that he would erode the lies and make her story a beautiful story of his redemption and restoration.
My third ingredient was deleting social media. The end of 2018, I hit rock bottom and was in a very bad place again. I wanted to kill myself, but I could no longer bring myself to do it. I simply accepted I would just live life dead inside, but physically living. I believed I could never be happy, but maybe indifferent. Yet, I was exhausted from the depression and anxiety and wanted some real change in my life. So late one night, I decided to permanently delete all my social media. Since then, I have created and deleted new accounts in waves, when I was in a much healthier place and set boundaries. But by these real-life experiments, I found social media is no longer a coincidence, but has proven to bring back my suicidal thoughts. Why social media worsens my mental health, I don't know exactly. All I know is that it does. After the withdrawals and FOMO, fear of missing out, I tasted the happiness and freeness of life without it. to the point that today I find no joy or attraction to it. I now only have Facebook, but don't have it on my phone and use it about 5 times a year. Deleting social media was probably one of the biggest things that helped me. My fourth ingredient is options. There are always options. Knowing I have options frees me from feeling trapped. I felt trapped by life because I didn't know there were better ways to live it, meaning I didn't know I could actually be happy in life. Ending my life seemed the only option, so I felt compelled to do it. I didn't believe or truly see the other options as possible or something I wanted. Even in the small things, giving myself options makes the day seem approachable. My fifth ingredient is surrender. In January 2019, I gave up. I said something along the lines of, God, I get it. I have tried other ways of living, but the only way I know I have the greatest chance of finding some happiness in life is choosing you. But I have no idea what or how to do Christianity, and I am tired of trying to figure you out. I don't even know if you're real, but if you are, please just come and get me yourself. My next two ingredients, ingredients 6 and 7, is the Bible and living in community. Long story short, in 2019, I dropped out of college and found myself in South Africa in some Bible school. I thought the further I could get from home, the further I could get from my problems. Unfortunately, my problems followed me. Going to Bible school forced me to read and study and apply the Bible about 5 hours a day. Hebrews 4:12 says, "For the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart." This is so true. My life completely changed during my 3 months there, not because I was in some other country, but because I was delving into the scripture, trying to make sense of it all for myself, but not by myself. So much happened when I started studying the Bible in community with other people, trying to figure the whole Christianity thing out themselves. The first thing revealed to me was that I hated God more than I had ever hated anyone. I blamed Him for all those times I would read the Bible and pray and do all the Christian things, and He never answered me. But in hating Him, I knew I believed He was real. So as I was held accountable by the community of people around me, mentors and peers, to read the Bible, I kept reading. And a side note on this community, everyone was open with one another and kept each other accountable, with us all having the goal of trying to understand and live out the Bible truly. And boy, that was rough, but we all changed drastically because of it. So I kept reading, and I came across the verse Ezekiel 36:26-27. Sorry. And in this verse, God says, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of you and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments and do them." I hated praying, so I just repeated this verse back to God, telling Him I give up, except on this one thing. I will pray this verse every day until something happens, even if it takes 30 years. I just no longer wanted to live with this deadness inside of me.
In April of 2019, we met up with Mackenzie in France and Belgium after her schooling in South Africa. We took the family to visit an old monastery that was desolate. It was once a place of worship, but now a place of ruins. And it's here that God gave me a new verse to pray over my family. And it's from Ezekiel. Ezekiel 36. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day I cleanse you from all your sins, I will resettle your towns, and your ruins will be rebuilt. The desolate land will be cultivated instead of lying desolate in the sight of all who pass through it. They will say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. The cities that were lying in ruins, desolate and destroyed, are now fortified and inhabited. Then the people around you that remain will know that I, the Lord, have rebuilt what was destroyed, and I, the Lord, have replanted what was desolate, and I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. It was a promise that God gave me of salvation, redemption, and restoration. This past summer, a lady in our church came to me to tell me how much she appreciated Mackenzie. She continued to share how she noticed years ago when Mackenzie was in high school that there was no life in her eyes. But today she wanted to let me know that she saw life in the eyes of my girl.
My 8th ingredient was finding out I had ADHD and OCD. In the summer of 2019, I was diagnosed with ADHD and OCD. Finding out this helped me to understand myself and be able to provide real solutions to a lot of my problems. I am still working through this today, but I have come a long way, and I would say it was God. It was this weird mixture of me and Him working together, meaning I finally asked Him for help, and I finally used the tools He gave me. I used to be in love with the result, or the end destination of finally being perfect. Today, I am learning to accept myself where I am, and like the journey. I am much more free as I build relationships with others rather than hiding, and having emotions is okay. I'm learning that I don't have to be perfect for God to love me.
I still have times of anxiety and fear, and I carry guilt and shame with me. But looking back, I wish I had placed myself into counseling early on in my parenting. But I've learned many lessons. I'm understanding emotional attachment better. I learned that I have a great family and very supportive friends. But most of all, I've learned that you can have peace in the midst of darkness. I've learned it's not the size of my hope, it's where and who I put my hope into. My hope is not based on what is to come, but what was done on the cross and through the resurrection of our living Savior, Jesus Christ.
Today I'm feeling hope as a parent. I see how God is redeeming and restoring. I see how God's strength was sufficient in a very dark season, made perfect in my rather complete weakness. I am holding Ecclesiastes 3:11, which says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." God makes everything beautiful in time. And if you read the context of these words from Solomon, it is after a long list of very unbeautiful situations: mourning, death, uprooting, weeping, destruction, hate. When Mackenzie was in the treatment center, we would drive down most evenings to visit her. She had a love for Dunkin' Donuts in those days, so we would stop and bring her a cup of coffee most every night that we came and visited her. After that week, when I drove by that same Dunkin', I'd feel that sense of hopelessness that I felt during that time until about a year later, when I was driving Mackenzie to the airport to spend a semester in South Africa, which really was an event filled with hope and expectation, and we stopped at the same Dunkin'. God gave me a new memory. Now, when we passed that Dunkin', I no longer have those thoughts of hopelessness, but hopefulness. God makes everything beautiful in time. This is not a story of current perfection. I don't know, and I don't know the place that you are on your journey. In my darkest thoughts, I held Isaiah 43:2 close. When, and my commentary is, it doesn't say if, you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Keep walking. Put your hand in God's hand and keep walking. I still struggle with balance and connection. I know for certain that we still parent poorly at times, but God is making Mackenzie, Caleb, and us beautiful. Her story, your story, and our story is still being written.
Thank you. All right, they're going to get down, and I'm going to get my stuff back together. Is that good? I would like to thank the Judd family for being here today and sharing their story. Doing something like this takes a lot of courage and a willingness to be transparent. It's emotional and painful recalling the past, and I'd like to thank you for the sacrifices you have made to be here today in the hopes that God will be able to bless and encourage the people who are listening today. As we come to the end of our time, I would like to leave you with a visual. Ryan, could you pop up the visual? This is a group of strangers in England who are stopping a suicidal man from jumping off a bridge. What can we learn about this? How to hold on to someone? First, step in immediately. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, don't wait, tell someone now. If someone you know is struggling, stay with them until they can get help. Or if they are not at the point of wanting to give up but are feeling depressed, help connect them to a professional counselor. Glorifying suicide, such as we see in social media, is not good. However, asking someone who is in despair if they have thoughts of suicide is very helpful. If those feelings are already there for the person, talking openly about them can help reduce their shame for feeling that way. It can open up the space for them to talk, and it lets them know that you care. Talking about suicide in this way does not make it more likely to happen. As you can see from this picture, the people are holding the man tight. One person has their arms wrapped around his neck. Another is holding onto his belt. Another reached through the bars of the bridge and firmly held his legs. These people held on to this man for nearly 2 hours. Be present. How can you hold onto a person securely? These people tied a rope, but for us, that means being a consistent friend in the life of someone who struggles. Be a good friend. A good friend is not judgmental. A good friend doesn't make you feel small or inadequate for having your feelings. A good friend doesn't offer to give you tough love lectures when you're in that place. A good friend doesn't criticize you or make you feel like a bad Christian. A good friend reminds you that you matter to them and you matter to God. A good friend reminds you that they see you and that God sees you too, and that you matter deeply to both. One last thing. Back to that cave rescue in Thailand. One of those 12 soccer players, 14-year-old Abdul Saman, was the only Christian in the group. Abdul states, "When the panic first set in, I just felt like I had to talk to God. He gave me a very strong belief that someone would come for us. Even though the doubts and fears were there, this strange belief, something I never felt before the cave, was the strongest thing I felt. Abdul relied on the Lord's Prayer and one of his favorite songs, How Great Is Our God, for strength. He said that he must have prayed and sung them thousands of times in the cave. He states, I couldn't see much in the cave, and I realized that's quite similar to how I can't see God in real life. But I have to trust that he's going to show his power and goodness at the end. If you are here with a broken heart today, Psalm 147:3 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Sometimes I think that our biggest problem isn't that we can't see God. Sometimes I think our biggest problem is that we don't see that God sees us and that he cares about the details of our lives. We're going to be closing the message with a song called The Wild Earth, which is by Young Oceans, and Ron's going to be singing that for us. After the service, the four of us are going to be up front if you would like to talk, or if you would like someone to pray with you, or both. Don't walk out of here today if you need help. Keep holding on to others and keep holding on to God because he sees you and he's holding on to you.